And I would like to introduce Stella Lee to talk to us about AI literacy. So please.
Thanks, Christina. I loved it that it's so international in the chat, just looking at where everybody's coming from. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. Hang on just 1 second. Okay, can you guys see my screen sharing?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So the reason I'm not doing the full slideshow is because I like to see your smiley faces. So feel free to turn on your camera. And also it's easier for me to see the chat action. So just if you guys are having, hopefully this mode is not too distracting, but it just personally, I find it easier to look at everything instead of toggling back and forth. So anyway, I want to get started. Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everybody. I am here to talk about AI literacy. So I want to start with a personal pet peeve of mine. And I talk about this everywhere. Oh, by the way, feel free to jump in. This is very conversational. I'm here to share what I've been doing. And so feel free, if you have any comments, put it in the chat or even just unmute. And Christina, do people have the ability to just unmute and talk freely?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, right? Just, you don't need to give them permission or anything. Okay, yeah. Feel free to jump in and thank you for turning on for those who choose to turn on the camera. It's lovely to see you as well. Give me a focus instead of just me feeling like talking to myself. So my pet peeve about AI is that I really hate the term artificial intelligence. And the reason why is it just gives us unrealistic expectation when you talk about intelligence, and also like the term, it's been around for some time and it's still the definition varies. It's murky and it's not just one thing, it's a collection of technologies. So I want to show a question at you first. Do you know how long do you think the concept of AI has been around? Feel free to shout, put it in your text, and or whichever way you wanted to display it. Okay. And I no, I love it. So I know this is much this audience is probably much more well informed than the general public. So it is true, it is 70 plus years, and yeah, and it's up for debate. Some would say even like further back, right? But in fact, yeah, Maha, it's spot on. 1950, October, it's the first time Alan Turing, some would call the father of artificial intelligence, first documented this concept in his paper. So for those of you that are curious about kind of where it came from, feel free to read the source. I put all my references in the slide deck, and I presume that you guys will have access to it. Is it correct? That people will have access to it, Irene and Christina? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, I think if you share it with us, we can post with the recording.
Yes. Perfect. And so that's one of the problem. And the other problem is I think a lot of the conversation now about AI, it's really about generative AI, isn't it? The past 2 years. And if I illustrate in this diagram, you can see that Gen AI, or a lot of focus is even just ChatGPT, is just one tiny dot in the entire artificial intelligence ecosystem, right? And so, and my other pet peeve, if you will, or another, area that I often wanted to provide clarification, it's, hey, when we talk about AI, it's a much broader field than Gen AI. And even though some of the challenges and issues are similar, but keep an eye on like the broader field. And so, oh, by the way, I also am really tired of AI generated imagery, so I start using my own sketches. So thank you. I have an arts background, so I just didn't want to use all the AI generated images. I start, making my own sketch. Oh, thank you. And so I just want to touch base very, very quickly on, thank you. You guys are so lovely, on where we are currently with the AI landscape. And as you know, we have so many choices now, even with just the chatbot interface. I'm sure you guys are often, at least some of them. I know everybody use OpenAI pretty much, or for those that have access to it, perhaps Copilot, Gemini, and some of the other ones. So the market, it's quite flooded with a lot of tools. And if that's not enough, do you guys know of, hygiene is horrifying and amazing at the same time. It makes you, it actually maps your mouth movement in one language and translate it into a different language. So I can appear to speak fluent Spanish and French and Japanese and whichever languages they provide with me in front of the video. So are any of you heard of, there's an AI for that? There are multiple AI tool repositories out there. And this is just one of the more popular ones. So the current marketplace is super crowded. AI's been it's been in the ed tech space for, I don't know, 15 years plus, but the past 2 years really really blossom because the funding is available. It's a buzzword, and people just cannot get enough of it. And it creates a lot of confusion too about what are we going to do? Like, how many tools are there? Like, for example, with this repository, I'm sure the number has changed now because I took the screenshot like a few weeks ago, and even then it has 12,760 tools. And, I certainly cannot keep up with that. And it's creating a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, a lot of kind of uncertainty or unknown of like what I'm going to do about that. And that's very much the conversation on AI. It's very much focusing on the tools. How do we know what's out there? How do you evaluate them? What are some of the issues that we need to think about? And like, is this for the conversations, is AI for good? Is it for evil? Is it going to help us do our job better? Is it going to take, replace our job? So a lot of very confusing and contradictory conversations are happening. This is kind of how, the background, or it's setting the tone of my impetus on why I created AI literacy, is because so much of the conversation is really focusing on the technology itself, like the how-to, if you will, and also like what tools to use from the tool identification and selection process, but not enough to think about AI in a broader term. The analogy I like to use is as if automobiles being introduced for the first time, and everybody's so focusing on, wow, look at the engine, look at the cruise control, look at the tires, and try to figure out how the cars work, but not thinking about, by introducing cars to our ecosystem, what does it mean to us? Like, how are we going to redesign our cities? How are we going to coexist with pedestrians? How are we going to think about how is it impacting the way we moved around, right? And so that's how AI literacy framework that I created came about. It's because I was feeling like we're missing a bigger picture. We're missing a framework to kind of help us frame a lot of this conversation. And other little sketch here. And, so talking about developing AI literacy, I also want to talk about like how I came about doing that. Oh yeah, so Veronica recognized Bender from Futurama. Thank you for identifying other robots. And so last year in around July, August time, I can't believe it's been a year. I've been approached to develop a workshop for educators. It was by energy. Oh, thank you. I'm happy that people are making use of it. So I've been asked by this company in the Netherlands to develop an AI toolkit for educators to be used as a workshop. They do cooperative with universities in Europe to develop master's programs for renewable energies and engineers. So they work very closely with professors in different universities in Europe. And when Gen AI tools and technologies came about last year, they were like, okay, we need to help teachers to understand this better and look at, how they can incorporate that into the teaching and learning. And so I developed this toolkit, and as I start putting it together, I start thinking about, okay, other than explaining and helping people on like what are the various techniques on AI, what are various tools, how do you use it for teaching and learning, I felt like it was missing a framework for both the teachers and the students and the administrators as well to think about how do we have this AI conversation? How do we look at it as a skill building foundation? What are some competencies that we need to develop AI literacy? So the very first iteration of this framework came about because of this workshop, because I need something to talk to the teachers about in a broader context. So that has since evolved. As you see, the original one has 7 key areas, and each key area has a set of competencies, and that has changed. Today, I added an 8th dimension, and I show it to you in a minute. But first, I want to define what AI literacy means to me. So I first of all wanted to emphasize that it is something that we need to intentionally cultivate. So it takes some effort, just like any literacy, right? Literacy in numbers, in social media, in data. It is something you need to put efforts in cultivating. And I don't want it to just be about how do you use AI. I want it to be not just understanding AI, how to use it, how to apply it, but also to evaluate. Collaboration is a big one, because as tools are being introduced, sometimes we don't even have a choice if we're working in an organizational context. So we need to learn how to collaborate with that. And also, how do we further the field? How do we contribute to it? And it doesn't have to be AI as from a technical focus. How do we contribute to the conversation of what kind of societal impact, what kind of ethical, economical, other impacts that this technology has on us and as individuals and as society. So the contribution, to me, it's critical, because we're not passively reacting, but we're actively engaging as things change, as things happen. So that's my definition. And I'll be very curious if I'm missing anything. This is, again, everything I've been developing is evolving as the technology evolves. So if you have any thoughts, feel free to share with everybody. So as you see the framework now, and I just updated that this month, so fresh off the press, it has 8 areas of competencies, and I would go through each one quickly with you guys. And I put the source here. If you wanted to download the framework and the competencies, feel free to follow the links here and in other slides as well. So the first one, the first area is AI. I call it AI fundamentals. Really is just, all the basic terminologies. Like, we hear machine learning. What does it mean in relations to AI? We hear about neural network. We hear about deep learning, or even what's data. And then you hear about training data. And it helps to at least understand the basic. Again, my emphasis on that, it's not that we all need to be computer scientists or AI scientists, but enough that we can ask informed questions when we are engaging with the technology. We can ask for clarification. We can ask for explanations. At least we know what the differences are at the basic level. I'll give you an example of that. So as I talk about AI, it's a collection of technologies. So what do you think this AI is? Facebook used technology to, recognize faces when you upload photos, even though you don't explicitly say, who this person is. Yeah, I love that you guys are so informed about AI. So yes, facial recognition. And facial recognition is only one of many other technologies, right? And it's also called AI. By the way, when I was a student, when I was doing research, we don't even say AI. We just say we're doing facial recognition research. And in fact, it's not even facial recognition, it's computer visioning back then. And so now AI, it's being kind of all these other techniques and technologies are being grouped as AI. So that's why I don't really like the term, because it's not precise and it's really not giving us an understanding of what it is about. So it is facial recognition algorithm that detects this imagery, right? In fact, it's called deep face. And it was very controversial because Facebook basically used everybody's uploaded photos on their platform without getting user consent, or people didn't understood what that means. So they got a lot of pushback, and they currently discontinued this feature since 2021. But it is facial recognition function. Good job for identifying that. So that's the first competency or the first key area. And the second key area, I call it data fluency. I call it data fluency because I don't want to call it data literacy again. There's just so many literacy, but it really essentially is the same thing as understanding about data. Because AI models are functioning because we put data into the model. But the reason we need to know about data is that how do you know this AI model, it's good or it's bad or it's biased or it's problematic or it's missing something, until we have a way to look at it, until we know what to look for, until we understand why we need to be vigilant in sourcing data. We won't understand or we won't able to evaluate an AI model if it's, if it has any problems. And I also want to emphasize the importance of data governance. It is something I think perhaps it got added on at the end, but when we're implementing AI solutions, we need to start thinking about it at the beginning. And other example is that, did you guys know about or have you watched Coded Bias? It's a documentary about the biases in facial recognition. I think Rebecca is nodding. So yeah, some of you have. I'm just gonna, Coded Bias. I'm just gonna put it there. And yes, and she actually just published a book, I think this year as well. I think it's called Unmasking AI. So highly recommend that. It's just a more detailed document of her journey in first programming facial recognition system and discovering the biases in. Essentially, she was trying to program a game to recognize her face, and she realized because she's dark that the technology couldn't even map her face until it was Halloween. She happened to have a mask on, and she put it on. It's a white mask, and surely enough, the technology instantly recognized the mask. And as she was discovering why this was the case, and she realized the data that was trained on these facial recognition system didn't put enough source data with darker faces, and that is a problem that existed even before AI, right? When Kodak was trying to figure out what is a good what's a good color range for photography for portraits. They also use a pale skin Caucasian woman as the gold standard for photography. So this bias is perpetuated from before. The difference with AI is that now we magnify it like 1,000 times or more. So that's what we need to understand about how we source data and how that impacts the output of your AI systems. Then moving on to the next key area is critical thinking and fact checking. And I really love this graphic. If you guys can see it, it's like, it's so easy to confuse machine learning. Is it a dog or a muffin? And so essentially, you know, these systems make mistakes. It could spread misinformation or disinformation. It can also hallucinate. By the way, talking about another term that's problematic, I think hallucination is a very clever marketing term. It sounds way cooler than say, oh, our model just make a lot of mistakes. And so it's also like, wow, it hallucinates, but no, it's actually just wrong, right? It just gives you wrong information confidently, very convincingly. And so, you know, this is an area, if anything else, it's evolving because the models are evolving, the technologies are evolving. Maybe they're getting better. Like maybe the hallucination sounds more convincing. Maybe it is more difficult to look at it, because by the way, now they a lot of these models give you references, they give you sources, but then do you check the sources? Because sometimes they would also be wrong. Sometimes they could also be make up. So so it's getting more nuanced. Oh yeah, thanks Veronica for your comment. There's just so much good comments in the chat. So thank you for all the contributions. Hopefully we'll have a little bit more time to like have a bit of a discussion at the end, but feel free to shout out as well. This is super informal. If you have something you want to say, just unmute yourself. Not a problem at all. So yeah,
Stella,
yeah.
could you describe images? Because there are people in the session who are visually impaired. So I noticed that Christina wrote in the alternative text for the image. So if you could describe the images as you saw them. Thank you.
Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, so I'm showing an image of how easy it is to confuse machine learning from a visual input perspective. So I don't really know about dogs, so I don't even know what dogs these images are, but they are like small little cute dogs, and they could also look like blueberry muffins. And so if you wanted to confuse the algorithm, you can feed them, you know, a bunch of very similar looking imageries, even though they are not the same thing. And that's the problem, right? It lacks context. Like, how do we human recognize that? I don't even know. I don't even know if I can explicitly say, how do I know it's a blueberry muffin versus a dog? Yeah, maybe the texture, maybe the fact that the blueberry muffins have more blueberries in it. And the dogs only have 2 eyes and 1 nose. I don't know, but it's a lot of my implicit experiences, right, from the past that we still cannot explain it. Like, how do you explain gut feeling, right? Like, we can't explain it. We cannot program a machine to understand that. The only sure test, lick it. I love it. I'm with you. Just take a bite. If it barks, that's not a muffin. But that's the problem with machine learning from computer visioning perspective. The visioning is not perfect, and that's why self-driving cars, it's still not flooding the street, right? It has it has a lot of limitation. Yeah, gut feeling is so feminized and not appreciated. Yeah, and it is but in a lot of cultures, you know, that's been it's been passed on for centuries as well. So thanks, Maha, for mentioning that. So here's another misinformation example. I'm not sure if you guys read about this. I feel like it was all over the internet already. So Google has an AI overviews that just pushed out a couple months ago, and it returned very misleading results. In this instance, it's a post that say, well, somebody asks, like, how do you thicken the sauce for pizza? And Google said, oh, just use 1/8 cup of non-toxic glue, like glue, to thicken your pizza sauce. And the reason why Google returned this result, it's because what they did is they scraped the entire internet, right? Which is what ChatGPT and a lot of the large language models do. Is that you take in content, you ingest content without much of a vetting process, without thinking, like there's no thinking behind it. Really, it's a statistical model. So this particular post, they scraped the content from Reddit. And I don't know if you guys are on Reddit. Those you know, it's not accurate information always. It's people's opinions. And also, you got to blame the people who upvoted it. But here's another thing. I find Reddit people are very sarcastic. So how do you differentiate sarcasm from actual facts, right? I mean, people would joke about it. On Reddit, people they are kidding around. So how do you know? Like, as a machine, you're not, you know, you can't program a machine to say, hey, that's sarcasm. And maybe that will come next week, who knows? But as of today, I haven't seen any language model to say, okay, we can differentiate jokes, sarcasm, and sometimes even cultural nuances. Yeah, I know, maybe it will come next week. It will be tomorrow. There'll be a big announcement. But as of today, this is why we need to have critical thinking skill, fact checking. And I mean, this is very glaringly wrong, but sometimes it's very subtle. Sometimes it sounds very convincing, and sometimes it requires a certain subject matter expertise. I don't even know, perhaps somebody that doesn't cook, or a teenager, or somebody's new at making food, they might be convinced that it's a good idea. You know, it's gluten-free. So it's very easy to confuse the issue. So that's an example I wanted to illustrate with misinformation and with critical thinking and fact checking. So moving on to the next one, I wanted to play a game actually. So now I need to stop sharing and start with another screen, I think. Just bear with me for a second. There you go. You guys know about this. Can you see? Are you able to see this?
Yeah.
You guys know
this
about
one
this?
is difficult to do as alternative text, yes, sir? Because they're just two faces of people, and we're supposed to guess which one is a real person. So it's difficult to explain to you.
Yeah, one is AI generated, and the other one is an actual person. So maybe just bear with me for a minute. I would describe why one is AI and the other is a real person. So can you guys pick for me, left or right? Which one is real?
Which one's real?
Yeah. Oh, hello. Left, right. Oh, wow. Wait, I think
Left.
oh, I got the sound back. Sorry, I lost the sound for a second. Oh my God. Okay, there's more left. I think let's click that. Oh, that's right. So the left is a man and the right is a girl. Let's do one more and I can explain. Okay, left or right? What do you think? Right, left. Okay, right. Okay,
Right.
more right. Let's try. Oh, you guys are really, really good. So, how do you know?
I can say my system because I respond relatively quickly. I think the AI generated images have a different type of smile, but it's the same kind of range
Yeah,
of smile, whereas
yeah.
humans actually have different types of smiles. That's
Okay,
my.
that's good observation. Anybody else?
There is also a way that AI brushes the hair, or,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, any hair on your body that is really artificial. So that's also another thing.
Wow. And I think Jessica also said AI struggles with ears and eyes and hands and feet, which we don't see here. Yeah. And teeth. Actually, I think teeth is very difficult. On the head, it's not quite well. Yeah. So what I like about this site, by the way, the site is called whichfaceisreal.com. I like this site because, and there are many similar ones that can kind of help you get better at detecting AI generated images. It's that there's a learn section, and if you click on it, it actually it teaches you like what are some of the things to look for. So like in this instance, they talk about background problems. It's a giveaway when it has, it all sort of things. It's something it's missing. Like maybe it's not seamless, sometimes it's patches. Somebody mentioned eyeglasses as well, and eyes, asymmetries, hair is another thing, fluorescent bleed. So it's quite interesting to learn about these things. And I encourage you to play around with that and get better at detecting. And again, these things are evolving all the time. It is true today. Keep an eye out on like what will change tomorrow, because as it gets better, maybe AI can generate better hands and better eyes and better teeth. Who knows? But as of today, these are the limitations. So the other thing I want to talk about, this is very interesting, under diverse AI application. The reason I put this here is because I think sometimes we are in education. Is everybody in education or coming from other fields as well? I'm in education, so let me take my own domain as an example. In education, a lot of times we tend to look at like what's happening in education. What are the use cases in education? And it's great. I think we need that. But at the same time, it could be a little bit echo chamber-ish. Like we are kind of reinforcing each other's thinking. And also we only look at innovation and applications in education. And as you know, this is a very slow moving field. Things that happen in education, it probably already happened in other areas. One example I like to use is in education technologies, all the technologies that would use in this field, it was already implemented in consumer grade tech. Anything that's being available, like home appliances, smart appliances, all of that that's being being sold on the market. I imagine in 2 or 3 years time, we'll get them in the education room. And so it's really useful to look at how is AI being used in banking and finance and healthcare, in this case, driverless cars. How do the sensors work? How does it incorporate environmental awareness, contextual awareness in driverless car? Really funny news here. There's a guy in San Francisco. He trying to confuse Waymo is one of the autonomous vehicle companies. He tried to trick Waymo to stop by wearing a stop sign t-shirt. So this photo, it's about a story of Waymo's, the autonomous vehicle company in San Francisco, being tricked into stopping when this guy is wearing a t-shirt that has a stop sign signage on his chest. I actually, think that he's very brave to be standing in front of a car and hope that it will stop in front of him. But that's another story. As a result, the internet now, if you search for like a stop sign t-shirt, you can actually buy one. It's becoming a something you can purchase online. Yeah, thank you for the alt text. Yeah, there's also that same with like anything to do with computer visioning. Computer visioning is an area in AI probably needs more development because visual recognition is difficult. And it could easily confuse the machine. So yeah, you can also wear specific makeup to confuse facial recognition system, so then they don't recognize your face. That's correct. So look at diverse AI applications in other area that I think we need to pay attention to. So number 5 is AI ethics. I think we all know in this group, I think we're more familiar with and more giving a lot of thoughts in AI. And so I think you guys are probably read about or start exploring or probably dive deeper into AI ethics than most people. But anytime I talk about this topic, people always like, it worries me. People say, oh, I haven't thought about that. Oh yeah, that's a good idea to think about AI ethics. And it's almost like an afterthought. I think it's getting more mainstream now. I think people are aware of it just because there's so many news items now about biases, about violation of privacy issue, about how AI is not secure. It's a broad topic. I really like this could even just be a whole conversation on that. And so I wanted to again point out the importance of thinking it through. The other thing I wanted to talk about is I really liked Carolyn Whiteback. She has a paper called Ethics as Design, and it talks about let me just type it in here for you guys. Ethics as design. So instead of saying, okay, we're always like critiquing or judging about like, is this right or this is wrong? And her take is that it's much more nuanced than that. And instead of critiquing or judging, we need to think about it as a design thinking process. We have to think about it as a solution. We have to think about it as something that it doesn't have one right solution, but multiple solutions. And it's constantly evolving and it's iterative as the context change, as our understanding of ethical issues change. So that's another area that is very it's very broad, covers multiple topics, but it's also something that we need to put some thoughts on. And thank you for, Christina, you're awesome for searching for that. So yeah, so have a look at that. I definitely incorporate her work into my framework and use it often. So just to give you a couple examples, I think you're all familiar with all these AI image generation programs. This is Leonardo.ai. When I say, I generate a medical doctor in Canada performing surgery, it's all men, and they all look quite similar as well. So there's a generic quality to the image, but also as a teaching point to think about, well, is it perpetuate assumptions that doctors are always men? Like, is this something, is it something, we wanted to reinforce by using these programs to generate images? Again, same thing with nurses, it's all women. No matter how many images you ask this program to generate, it's the same. Like, even if I ask it to generate 8 images, also women, they also look very similar. And then on the other end of the spectrum, which with Google AI, it overcompensated and it started making up diversity of images of Americans, founding fathers with Vikings and other people that it's just wrong. It didn't exist. But then they try to introduce diversity, but without context, again, without understanding. So that's almost the other end of the spectrum. Is like, okay, you just cannot, make these images up because they're just wrong and they're not true. So so understanding about like biases and when to what are the right mitigation strategies, what are the limitations. It's one example of thinking about ethics. So then moving on to AI pedagogy, because I created this framework for educators, so I want to think about how AI has changed the way we teach and learn. What do we need to think about differently? And how are we grounding still some of the pedagogical principles while we're using AI instead of letting the technology drive us, instead of letting the technology, be the determining factor on how we teach and learn. We need to be grinding that into our educational practices. So we have hundreds and hundreds of resources here. I just pointed out two that I really like. The AI Pedagogy Project by Harvard has a lot of really good assignment ideas. Exploring AI pedagogies also. But there's tons more resources. So I encourage you to explore them, or if you wanted to have a chat with me after, I'm happy to share additional ones as well. Here's what I shamelessly steal Maha's quote. Maha, I watched one of your presentation and you mentioned this quote and I loved it. So don't feel like you have to do it all. I felt, sometimes this is very overwhelming with AI, with all the resources, with all the technologies, with all the updates. Margaret Weekly, American writer and teacher, said, whatever the problem is, community is the answer. So leverage that. Think about, like if you can't look at all the tools, like who is more tech savvy in your network? Can you ask them? Can you look at AI as something you can, perhaps you're more interested in the ethical issue. So perhaps you're the ethic person to go to, and you can share that learning with others. To me, it's always about, well, I can only learn so much, but if I share that, maybe that would help build your understanding, and maybe you can then look at it differently, and you can come back with your own use case and add to the richer conversation, right? Thanks, Maha, for yeah, I watched one of Maha's, I think it's her also critical AI literacy talk, and I just love this quote so much, and I think it's so applicable, especially for MYFest. It's all about building communities, and I really love that. And talk about communities, there's these two, and there's many other groups out there. Learn with AI Toolkits. It has a lot of resources, but also it came from one of our AI for Teacher Google discussion group. One of the members created this, and so again, great resources and conversations. And then I created an AI for Teachers group. But there's, like, if you search LinkedIn, for example, if you use LinkedIn, there's a lot of other AI for educators, AI for learning professionals. If you're in more the corporate, or the workplace learning side of education, there's a lot of groups targeted for that. If you're more in higher education or vocational training, there's also very specific groups just for a particular type of education as well. So have a dig around, and it gives you, quite a good sense. Yeah, the Learn with AI Toolkit, it's from University of Maine. They post a lot of other resources. Thank you for that. So then, this is the new area that I'm still putting a lot of thinking around. It's on assessment. It used to be included in AI pedagogy, but over this past year, people say, oh, it's something we need to think about separately. And there's so much to think about in terms of assessment. So I created that as a separate category. So this area it's really about, well, how do we, incorporate AI into assessment? And it doesn't have to be, well, of course, summative is the bigger conversation, but also formative as well, especially in workplace setting. How do you use AI to support more personalized feedback? How do you use AI to look at or support learning analytics? And to rethink assessment or authentic assessment in light of all this change. So this is an area that I'm still developing some resources and thinking around it. If you have any ideas, I would love to hear it. Then the last one, it's on future of work. It's thinking about, AI, it's happening now, but it's also impacting our future, specifically the way we work, specifically as if we're teaching students to think about employability, to think about the changing skills. Like, what are we teaching them to prepare them better? How do they prepare themselves, right? What kind of future are they facing? So also for ourselves, like in terms of like what kind of skill sets do we need to develop? How is it changing the way we do work? How do we change the way we work with other people? So this is kind of final area to think about. And I like to use some case studies to illustrate this key area. For example, Duolingo, and many other companies too, like FedEx and others that been kind of laying off people and replacing them with AI tools. Duolingo was a little bit, it's troubling for me because they lay off their translators, the human contractors, and they kept some of them, but the one they kept, they actually used them to train the AI translation models so that they can get better at it. So you essentially, the people that are being, kept, you essentially, training the model. So you're training your way out of your job as well. It's ironic and it's sad. And actually I used Duolingo and I noticed the quality also gone downhill. So I'll leave it with you to think, what you want, but I also think there's a cost associated with laying off people quickly, because it saves money, because, AI tools, they think it could be better, but maybe it's not. Maybe longer term, it actually gets worse. So think about the impact. That explains some of the stupid sentences it makes. Are you talking about Duolingo? Is that is that what Maha is referring to? Yes. Yeah. So you notice that it's changed too, and it's not for better. So definitely, I've noticed the change in quality. But that's perhaps a future that we're facing. Increasingly, more products are using AI. So if you notice the change in quality, like we as consumers, do we have the right to push back? Are we able to collectively say, no, we want human in this process? We need some human oversight. We need more of that, and so that's an area that it's worth thinking on its own. So that's your complete framework that I wanted to share with you. And the competency, just to give you a glimpse for each level, there's 3 competencies. I also, by the way, changed the name now. Instead of calling it introductory, intermediate, advanced, I call it exploring, integrating, and pioneering, because I don't want it to say advanced, like as if we arrived as if we are really good at it, because things change all the time. And so it's just to give you a way of developing your skills and knowledge and your competencies. I just want to give it 3 levels so that you can work on each one and think about where you're at, as a self-reflection tool, as a tool to kind of assess your AI literacy, if you will. So feel free to use it. I put the source there again. It has 72 competencies of all the 8 key areas. So that kind of concludes my presentation. I want to leave you with this quote that, AI is not a substitute for human intelligence. Hopefully, it is a way to amplify our creativity and ingenuity. And please connect with me if you need additional resources, further the conversations, or just brainstorm ideas. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on email, reach out to me, happy to continue. Thank you, Christina, for all the awesome explanations and framework, and Irene as well. And thanks for all your patience. Do I have a few minutes to chat?
We have about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And Rebecca was asking in the chat, she was saying thank you, and she loved the presentation, the slideshow. She was asking if you're going to share the slideshow for us to put up on the website. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I loved that you guys were posting comments and questions and sharing. It's what these talks are about. I don't want to hear myself talk the whole time. I think it's much more interesting to have people sharing. Oh, thank you. You guys are great. Yeah, feel free to say anything if you like.
Can I ask a quick question?
Of course.
So I love the competencies and the sort of levels. And I'm just wondering if you know of any place where these have been used or how they've been used.
Yeah, so I'm actually developing a course, an online course for Athabasca University. And we're launching that in September, October time. And it's for the graduate students, but I think it's free. So that you should be able to access it, but I'll let you guys know once it's launched. And also, like, in terms of the competencies, I know a few places been using it, including Energy, the company that originally engaged me to create that. They've been implementing that internally for their staff and also externally with the professors, and in terms they apply that to their classrooms. So I've been collecting use cases as well. So just different people been emailing that to me to say, I've been using that, I've been applying it. But, like, this is so new, right? And like last year, we spent, I think, the whole year just reacting to AI. And this year, I'm start seeing more people start thinking about, okay, like, what can we do? What can we do practically? How can we put some guidelines? How can we have this conversation? How can we work with our students or work with our colleagues? So I start seeing more of that this year, but it's still early days. And that's why I'm start getting feedback to say, oh, can you do assessment as a separate category? So those are based on feedback from people. We're also working now with Asian Development Bank, and maybe mapping that to the teachers' digital competencies, because their model came out in 2019, before all this, hype about AI. So they don't have any competencies on AI yet. So we're hoping to map on top of that competency model.
Great, thank you. There's a question from Manisha in the chat. Could your level of competencies such as Explorer, et cetera, apply to language learners?
Oh, for sure. I think language learners I think language learning is one of the more well-defined learning, because you have very clear competencies, right? You're A1 or A2 because you learn these tenses, these vocab, you can conjugate these words. So I think it should, like, the way I created my framework is with the idea that it's flexible enough, it's not set in stone. Feel free to adapt that if you think the context, it's perhaps it works better if you change certain things. Like I want it to be a flexible framework. And also, Manisha, you're a doctoral student. Good for you. It's a good program. I have some friends that teach that program. It's vigorous. So you have all my sympathy for having to go through this process. Hang in there. It's definitely a rewarding process as well. And I hope that you get to share your research with us sometimes. And also love to hear your take on how do you apply it to language learners. I was actually at a language learning conference in Colombia and shared that with the English language teachers as well. So I'd be curious to get their feedback. And yeah, feel free to like email and chat with me after, Manisha and others if you wanted to, talk more. Oh,
So
thanks.
I'll just say quickly that I'm afraid we're out of time, but I don't know, Stella, if you might be able to stay because I see Manisha has her hand up and maybe
Sure.
could have a conversation. So thank you so much, and just close it out officially for those who need to go. And thank you so much, Stella, for a fantastic presentation and discussion. And I will stop the recording.
Yeah.